In this lesson, we want to consider the issue of public goods, which are an example where the marketplace doesn't always deliver the efficient amount for particular reasons. We want to explore those reasons and see what kind of remedies exist in this case. So public goods are well-known everyday things, such as national defense, which provides security to an entire country, largely through the military, but also through diplomatic efforts. There's also the police, which would provide security and safety to a city or a town. Also has these elements of what we call a public good. We'll see that, define that in a minute. And then even fire protection. So these are things which you recognize are usually provided by government, certainly national defense, and most frequently fire and police. And the question is why? Why isn't the market a place for which we can produce these and exchange them? And there's some features about public goods that show why. And these features really are just two key properties of public goods. One is called non-rivalry in consumption, a technical term that simply means if I consume more of something, you do not need to consume less. And that's clearly the case with national defense. Once the military is providing some security, I benefit from that security. If I enjoy more, feel more safe as a result, it doesn't mean you have to consume less of that national security or feel less safe in any way. And that, of course, that non-rivalry is not true of most products. If I consume more pumpkins, then you have to consume less unless someone produces more. If I consume more jewelry, you'll have to consume less unless someone else produces more. So for most goods, there is this rivalry in consumption, and that makes it natural for the market to deliver. There's this rivalry able to allocate the resources because of this rivalry idea. Second is non-excludability. Non-excludability means you cannot prevent people, at least with a lot of effort, from consuming the good. And again, think of national defense again. If someone says, oh, I don't need to pay for this, then you can't exclude them from consuming the national defense. If they don't want to pay their taxes, they're still going to benefit from the national defense. And so this inability to exclude people also makes it very difficult for the marketplace to work. It creates what's sometimes known as a free rider problem, where people can benefit from the public good, they can benefit from the police or from fire protection, even if they're not really paying for it at all. The fire company is going to come and put a fire out in your house, even if you've been behind in your taxes. So this is the free rider problem that exists. And for both the non-rivalry issue and non-excludability issue, it's very hard to have the marketplace deliver the right amount of this kind of a good. National defense, I think, is pretty clear that this is a public good, has the properties of a public good. Police, pretty clear, although to some extent when you get into other areas, it becomes more questionable. Even police, after all, can sometimes be provided privately. Maybe on a university campus, for example, the police, a private police force enforcing security around the campus, that's not provided by the government, it's provided by the firm. Or you could think in a corporation, they may have security people watching out, that's private. So in these cases, it is something that's possible to exclude people, if you like. The benefits from the police and the private firm can be paid for privately by the firm. People outside the firm don't necessarily benefit from that at all. Another way to think about it in these cases, there's been an effort to provide some security for a limited area. It could be a firm, could be even a neighborhood. It could be a neighborhood where people have police protection that's provided privately. But even in these cases, we find ways to deal with the non-rivalry and non-excludability issue. Lighthouses are a famous example of public goods. Lighthouses, of course, built along the coast, near dangerous rock formations or reefs which the ships might run into, to warn them about it, especially at night or in the fog. It has these properties of a public good. It's hard to think about one ship benefiting more from the lighthouse and making other ship benefit less. It's also hard to exclude. Once the lighthouse is there, anybody sailing in the region or around those rocks is going to benefit from the lighthouse. So it has these properties of a public good, including the free rider. If someone doesn't pay for the lighthouse services, they can still benefit from the light to avoid the dangerous rocks or reef. It turns out, though, throughout history, a lot of time lighthouses have been provided without government. It could be shippers themselves have a way to collect a fee from the shipping businesses, maybe when they come into port. And so there becomes a situation where they're actually able to finance the lighthouse without the government. So in each of these cases, there's a clear definition of what we mean by public goods, but then it kind of becomes a gray area in certain cases. But what I would say is when you're thinking about where you use the rationale for a public good to, if you like, have the government provide it, a government intervene, be really clear about whether it is a public good or not, because frequently it's possible to find alternatives. Not all the time, but frequently. The question then is how much of a public good should be produced. In the market, we have a good system that works well for private goods. The marginal revenue will equal the marginal cost, and as a result of that, the marginal benefits will equal the marginal costs. Consumers are minimizing the deadweight loss. They're getting to maximize their consumer surplus, and firms maximize their producer surplus. We know that condition works well. Firms will produce up to the point where marginal benefit equals marginal cost in society as a whole. So the idea with the public good is to try to mimic that, try to get as close as you can to those efficiency conditions where marginal benefit equals the marginal cost for a particular product. And what that means is for national defense or for police, you'd like to use some kind of cost-benefit analysis to determine how much should be provided. There's, of course, lots of examples of this. You think about how many police should be on the street in a community or a town or a city. How many police cars should they have? Each of these can be examined and determined through cost-benefit analysis to some extent. If the question is, should the community get another police car? Well, the issue is the marginal benefit of that police car greater than the marginal cost of buying it, the marginal benefit in terms of increased safety in the community compared to the marginal cost of that car. If the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, then it makes sense to get that extra police car. If, on the other hand, the marginal cost is greater than the marginal benefit, it's going to cost more to get that additional car than the marginal benefits in terms of safety. It doesn't make sense to get it. So just as the market delivers this point where marginal benefit is just equal to marginal cost, what you try to do is using estimates, cost-benefit analysis, try to get to that point. And of course, it's difficult because not always do you know the benefits to the community of another police car. It's sometimes hard to estimate that. In the marketplace, it's going to depend on individual preferences of people, but in the case of public goods, you have to do an estimate, have to somehow add up across the community the marginal benefits that are obtained from, in this case, another police car. In principle, the same thing could be used even for national defense. National defense is sometimes measured in terms of the total amount spent on national defense for a given country, maybe as a share of its GDP, total production, gross national product. Or you could think about, do you need to have a national defense force that can simultaneously deploy to more than one place around the world, maybe 2 or 3 places? And so to decide the size, either in terms of the total budget or in terms of the number of deployable units, in terms of the number of troops, these kind of questions can also be in principle examined. Is a higher defense budget delivering more marginal benefits than the cost of that in terms of extra dollars? So in principle, you can do this, but you can imagine in the case of national defense, it's hard. In fact, in all the cases of public goods, it becomes something where people have different views, and they try to put their view forward in the political system. In a democracy, you have voting, you have elected officials that are going to try to make these decisions. All those things are not present in the marketplace, and they make it more difficult to get a good analysis of the costs and benefits. Nonetheless, it's clear that in some of these cases, it's necessary to have government provision government support because the marketplace will not deliver it. And again, the best example of this is something like national security. So this is an example where you need to have some government intervention, some government role other than the markets. We're going to consider some other examples like this, but think about this in terms of the benefits you get from the market in some cases you don't always get it. Thank you.